The ridge was never meant to be a battlefield. It was a jagged spine of black stone cutting through the red plains of Karos 9. Wind screamed through shattered rock like a living thing, carrying dust sharp enough to cut exposed skin. That was where 300 humans waited. They were miners once, engineers, cargo pilots, farmers pulled from half-forgotten colonies. They wore mismatched armor, scavenged from wrecks and fallen comrades. Some helmets bore cracks sealed with resin. Others were held together by tape and stubborn hope. None of them were supposed to survive the night. Below the ridge stretched an alien host 30,000 strong. The Charon Dominion had come in perfect formation, banners of bioluminescent silk waving above serried ranks. Their commanders believed numbers were destiny. History had always agreed with them. Orbital scans confirmed the math. 300 defenders, limited ammunition, no armored vehicles, no air support. Against an army bred for conquest and refined by centuries of war, the ridge should have fallen within the hour. Captain Mara Vance stood at the center trench, watching the enemy assemble. Her rifle was older than most of her soldiers, its stock, worn smooth by generations of hands. She did not give a speech about glory or sacrifice. She simply said they would hold, not because command demanded it, not because Earth would remember their names, but because behind the ridge lay evacuation. Routes filled with civilians who trusted the ridge to stand. Children slept beneath thin metal roofs, believing someone stronger was watching over them. The first alien artillery strike came at dawn. Plasma detonations chewed chunks out of the ridge face, showering the trenches with molten stone. Human shields flared and died in seconds. No one retreated. They returned fire with precision rather than volume. Every shot was aimed, every burst measured. Humans did not waste bullets on intimidation. They aimed to kill leaders, spotters, and carriers. The aliens advanced anyway. Wave after wave surged toward the ridge, confident the humans would break. They had never studied humans who had nothing left to lose. By nightfall, the ground below the ridge was already layered with fallen alien forms. The Dominion commanders frowned in confusion. This was taking longer than expected. They ordered a full assault, at first light, on the ridge. The humans cleaned weapons, shared water, and patched wounds with shaking hands. No one spoke of survival. They spoke only of holding. The ridge stood silent under the stars, and it did not fall. The second day began with sound, not orders, or alarms, but laughter. Private Jonah Reyes laughed as he taped a cracked power cell into place. Someone asked what was funny. He said the aliens had better armor, better guns, better numbers. But none of it mattered if they didn't understand terrain. The ridge turned every advance into a funnel of death. The aliens kept charging anyway. At sunrise, the Dominion unleashed shock troops. Towering figures, with layered chitin and kinetic shields, they moved like a living wall, certain nothing could stop them. The ridge answered with explosives buried deep in its bones. Stone erupted upward, throwing bodies and armor into the air. The humans had spent the night reshaping the battlefield. They collapsed paths, redirected kill zones, and turned natural fractures into traps. Every meter gained by the aliens cost dozens of lives. 30,000 became 25,000. By midday, the aliens began to hesitate. Their doctrine did not account for defenders who refused to flee, even when surrounded. Human snipers exploited that hesitation mercilessly. Captain Vance moved constantly. She dragged wounded soldiers from open ground, fired from exposed positions, and shouted corrections over failing comms. When a young soldier froze under fire, she stood beside him and fired until he moved again. Leadership was not loud speeches, it was presence. By afternoon, the aliens tried flanking maneuvers. They climbed sheer cliff faces they believed unguarded. They found humans waiting there too. Miners knew stone better than soldiers. Fighting became personal. Bayonets, knives, broken tools turned into weapons. Humans fought at arm's length, screaming through cracked visors. Aliens learned what desperation looked like up close. As night fell, alien commanders argued. They demanded orbital strikes to erase the ridge entirely. High Command refused. The evacuation routes behind the ridge were too valuable to destroy. The ridge had become a problem they could not simply burn away. Casualty reports shocked the Dominion. Losses exceeded projections by an impossible margin. 300 defenders were not supposed to inflict this level of damage. The numbers did not make sense. On the ridge, humans counted their own losses. Quietly, names were spoken, armor tags collected, rifles redistributed. Every fallen soldier left behind ammunition and responsibility. The line tightened, but it did not break. Somewhere in the dark, an alien observer transmitted a private message. It said the humans fought as if the ridge was alive, as if the stone itself refused to yield. Asterisk, the third day dawned red. Smoke clung to the ridge like a second skin. Only 200 humans remained able to fight. No one suggested retreat. The aliens came slower now. Cautious advances replaced reckless charges. Drones scanned every shadow. Artillery fire probed instead of overwhelmed. The Dominion was learning. Humans adapted faster. They baited drones into narrow passages. They allowed small breakthroughs, just to collapse tunnels behind enemy units. The ridge swallowed invaders whole. Ammunition grew scarce. Rifles switched to semi-fire only. Explosives were saved for moments that mattered. When bullets ran out, humans picked up alien weapons and kept fighting. Medical supplies vanished early. Wounds were wrapped with cloth torn from uniforms. Painkillers were rationed by severity. Some soldiers fought through injuries that should have ended them. Captain Vance was wounded by shrapnel but refused evacuation. She tied off the bleeding and kept moving. When asked why she wouldn't rest, she said, "Commanders don't bleed until the fight is over." No one argued. The aliens launched a coordinated assault at dusk. Multiple vectors, heavy units, air support screaming overhead. The ridge shook, like it might finally break. Humans held anyway. Sergeant Alam Khan detonated charges manually when the trigger failed. The blast took him at an entire alien platoon. His last words over comms were simple: "Tell them to keep holding." By nightfall only 150 humans stood. They were exhausted, bleeding, half-deaf from explosions. Still, they repaired barricades and reset traps. The ridge waited with them. Alien command grew desperate. 3 days had passed. Evacuation routes remained open. Every hour the ridge stood was a strategic failure. They prepared a final assault. Dominion war doctrine called it the crushing tide. Everything at once. No retreat, no hesitation. The ridge would fall or be buried. Underbodies, the aliens believed numbers would finally prevail. The humans prepared for dawn in silence. They checked weapons, touched armor tags, and looked at the horizon. None of them expected to see another night. Still, they planned to hold. Asterisk, dawn broke under fire. The crushing tide came like a living storm. Aliens surged forward in unbroken ranks. The ground itself seemed to move. Humans fired until barrels glowed. They rotated shooters, shared remaining ammunition. Every shot dropped an enemy who could not be replaced in time. The tide slowed. Air units screamed overhead. Human missiles took them down a suicidal range. Explosions lit the ridge like a funeral pyre. Smoke hid nothing. When ammunition ran dry, humans charged. They leapt from trenches into chaos. Fighting became brutal and close. No side held advantage in the blood-soaked stone. Captain Vance was knocked to the ground by an alien officer. She stabbed upward through chitin and rolled free. Her armor failed moments later. She kept fighting anyway. The aliens began to break. Not retreat, but hesitate. Fear rippled through ranks that had never known it. The ridge was supposed to be dead. A Dominion commander issued the unthinkable order: fall back. The transmission echoed across alien channels. Disbelief followed. The ridge had held against 30,000. Against doctrine, against probability. 100 humans stood among the wreckage. They were still standing. Orbital scans confirmed it. Evacuation was complete. Civilian transports jumped to safety one by one. The ridge had done its job. The aliens withdrew under cover of smoke. They left their dead where they fell. No victory banners were raised. Only silence remained. Humans collapsed where they stood. Some laughed. Some cried. Some simply sat, staring. At the horizon, they did not cheer. They were too tired. Captain Vance keyed a final message: "The ridge holds. Evacuation complete." Then she sat down and let the medics work. Asterisk, the Dominion never spoke of Kara's 9 again. Official records labeled it a strategic anomaly. Training manuals were rewritten. Quietly, never underestimate human defenders. Stories spread anyway, across alien space. Whispers of a ridge that ate armies, of 300 humans who refused to yield, of a battle that broke the math of war. Humans rebuilt the ridge into a memorial. Armor plates became markers. Names were carved into stone that had held firm. Visitors walked the trenches in silence. No statues showed heroes standing tall. They showed tired soldiers leaning on rifles, hands shaking, armor cracked, eyes still defiant. That was how humans remembered them. Military academies taught the battle for generations, not as a victory of firepower, but of stubbornness, adaptation, and refusal to accept defeat. The ridge became a symbol. When aliens asked why humans fought so hard for a stretch of stone, asterisk,